Could the relationship between Canada and the U.S. be at risk? The relationship between Canada and the United States is like a carefully balanced ecosystem. Both countries depend on each other for resources, jobs, and economic stability. However, recent tensions over energy exports and trade policies have transformed this partnership into a high-stakes game of chess. Could these tensions escalate further, disrupting daily life in both nations? Let's break down this complex situation into simple terms, exploring how it affects everything from the price of gasoline to the stability of the power grid. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on more global economic and political issues. The backbone of U.S.-Canada energy trade. Canada is the United States' largest electricity supplier, accounting for nearly all U.S. electricity imports. However, these imports only make up about 1% to 2% of total U.S. electricity consumption. While this percentage seems small on a national scale, certain states heavily rely on Canadian electricity to keep their lights on. For instance, New York imports about 25% of its electricity from hydropower generated in Quebec and Ontario. Other states, such as Minnesota and Michigan, are even more dependent. Minnesota imports 90% of its electricity imports from Manitoba Hydro, while Michigan sources 95% of its electricity imports from Ontario. This power doesn't just keep homes running, it fuels factories, hospitals, and public transportation. If Canada were to reduce these exports, states like New York could face electricity shortages or significantly higher costs, especially during extreme weather events like heat waves or polar vortexes when power demand surges. Energy experts estimate that during such crises, electricity bills in these regions could rise significantly, affecting households and businesses alike. Why would Canada consider limiting electricity exports? Canada's electricity exports are not just an economic decision, but also a strategic tool in trade negotiations. In 2023, the U.S. imposed a 10% tariff on Canadian aluminum, arguing that it was necessary to protect American jobs. In response, Canada hinted at using its energy exports as leverage in these trade discussions. This move illustrates how deeply interconnected the two economies are and how trade disputes can spill over into the energy sector. The role of oil in U.S.-Canada tensions. While electricity is crucial, oil remains the backbone of the U.S.-Canada energy relationship. The U.S. imports about 3.8 million barrels of oil per day from Canada, enough to fill 240 Olympic-sized swimming pools daily. This accounts for over 50% of total U.S. crude oil imports, making Canada America's largest foreign oil supplier. Several major pipelines transport this oil, including the Enbridge Line 5 pipeline, which runs under the Great Lakes, and the Keystone Pipeline System, which has been the subject of protests and legal battles. These pipelines deliver crude oil to refineries in Michigan, Illinois, and Texas, fueling cars, planes, and industries. If Canada restricted its oil exports, the effects would be immediate. Analysts predict that U.S. gas prices could spike by up to $1 per gallon, depending on supply chain disruptions. A truck driver filling a 100-gallon tank could face an additional $50 to $100 per trip. Airlines, shipping companies, and manufacturers would also see higher costs, leading to pricier plane tickets, delayed deliveries, and increased consumer prices. This isn't just a theoretical scenario. In 2023, wildfires in Alberta forced temporary shutdowns of Canadian oil production. Within a week, U.S. gas prices rose, though the increase varied by region. In states like Wisconsin, local supply chain disruptions contributed to fuel shortages. This incident highlighted just how fragile the energy supply chain is. and how quickly disruptions can impact daily life, trade wars, and their consequence. The US and Canada have been trade partners for over 150 years, but recent policies have strained their relationship. The Buy American and America First policies have led to several disputes, affecting industries on both sides of the border. One major flashpoint occurred in 2018 when the U.S. imposed a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum, citing national security concerns. In retaliation, Canada imposed tariffs on $12.6 billion worth of U.S. goods, including bourbon, ketchup, and lawnmowers. Though these tariffs were lifted in 2019, tensions over industrial policy remain. Another dispute revolves around electric vehicles (EVs). The U.S. Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 offers tax credits for EVs made in America, which Canada argues unfairly excludes its automakers. Ford and GM plants in Ontario supply key components for U.S. assembled vehicles, and this exclusion threatens North American supply chains and clean energy goals. These policies have real-world consequences. A Michigan factory that depends on Canadian steel might face higher production costs, leading to layoffs. Similarly, a Canadian farmer paying more for U.S. made tractors might have to raise food prices. Social media and public reactions. Frustration over these trade disputes is visible on social media. Hashtags like #TradeWar and #CanadaIsFeud frequently trend, with small business owners sharing stories of supply chain chaos. One Ontario bakery owner tweeted, "Why are we taxing each other's flour? This hurts everyone." These disputes are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They impact real people and businesses. The economic interdependence of the U.S. and Canada. The economies of Canada and the U.S. are deeply intertwined. Consider these connections. Automotive industry. A Ford F-150 pickup truck might have its engine made in Ohio, its transmission in Ontario, and its final assembly in Michigan. Over $100 billion in auto parts cross the border annually, supporting over 1 million jobs. Raw materials. Canada supplies 76% of America's cobalt imports used in EV batteries, and about 14% of its uranium for nuclear power. Agriculture. The U.S. buys $25 billion worth of Canadian agricultural products annually, including wheat, pork, and maple syrup, while Canada imports over $20 billion in U.S. produce like fruits and vegetables. During the 2021 Texas freeze, Canada increased natural gas exports to help Americans stay warm. If political tensions continue to escalate, such cooperation may no longer be guaranteed, leaving both nations vulnerable. The real cost for everyday people. Trade disputes and energy shortages don't just affect businesses, they hit consumers directly. Here's how. Higher energy bills. If Canadian electricity exports decrease, U.S. utilities will pass the costs to consumers. In 2022, a hydropower shortage contributed to higher electricity costs in New York, with some estimates suggesting an additional $1.2 billion in costs, equivalent to about $100 per household. More expensive gas. A restriction in oil exports could push U.S. gas prices above $5 per gallon, costing an average family an extra $50 to $75 per month. Rising consumer prices. Tariffs on materials like steel increased the cost of cars, appliances, and even soda cans. A 2023 study found that U.S.-Canada tariffs cost the average American household hundreds of dollars per year. Could the situation get worse? The future of U.S.-Canada relations depends largely on politics. While leaders like Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden publicly emphasize strong ties, underlying tensions remain. Two major disputes could escalate the situation. Line 5 pipeline dispute. Michigan wants to shut down Enbridge's Line 5 pipeline, citing environmental risks. Canada argues that closing it would violate a treaty guaranteeing uninterrupted energy flow. If shut down, over 11 million Americans could face propane shortages for heating, and fuel prices could surge. The EV battery war. Canada has vast reserves of critical minerals like lithium and cobalt, essential for EV production. Recently, Canada tightened restrictions on foreign investment in its mining sector, limiting U.S. access. This rivalry could delay clean energy progress and disrupt the auto industry. Is there a solution? While tensions are rising, solutions exist. Both nations could expand renewable energy partnerships, ensuring a stable supply of clean electricity. Trade policies could be restructured to minimize disruptions while maintaining fair competition. Cooperation, rather than confrontation, is the key to ensuring economic stability for both nations. The U.S. and Canada are more than neighbors, they are economic partners. Their future depends on how well they navigate these growing tensions. What do you think? Will diplomacy prevail? Or is a deeper trade war on the horizon? Let us know in the comment.